I think we're going to get started here. So I wanted to just say hello to everybody from home again. This is our second Cooped Up with Carmen series, and today I'm very excited to introduce our guests that we've brought on today, because I think many people are having a lot of questions on some resources that people might have for their own personal finances. So our guest today is Larry Pon. He is a certified public accountant, a personal financial specialist, a certified financial planner, an enrolled agent, United States Tax Court practitioner, accredited estate planner in Redwood Shores, California. So as you can tell, Mr. Pon has a lot of experience. He's been in practice since 1986, and very much, I think one of the things that we know about him is that he really enjoys helping his clients and really trying to figure out ways to help you meet your financial goals. And so we're very, very pleased to have Larry here. Hey, Larry, how are you?
Hi, Carmen. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. We have a few questions for Larry today. And so I think many people are having a very hard time, especially given all that we're seeing with COVID-19. Many people have either lost their jobs or have their hours significantly reduced. And so I think there's a lot of uncertainty around finances at this moment in time, in addition to the public health risks. I'm wondering, Larry, if you have some thoughts about programs that might be able to help people, especially with expenses that might be coming due.
Yeah, there are a lot of programs out there, and it depends on what kind of expenses we're talking about. First of all, a lot of us have mortgages, and if you have a federal loan, any loan that is federally guaranteed, there's what's called a forbearance program. And which means there is some flexibility in terms of making your payment. The first thing I would recommend is contact your servicer to see what kind of options are available to you, and they will work with you depending on what your circumstances are. But one reminder though, forbearance does not mean forgiveness. You still owe the mortgage. The payments are still due. It's just that you're getting a little more time to make the payments. And however, there's also a consequence on your credit also. So you need to weigh out to see how that affects you.
Yeah, and so what I understand that several weeks ago, it might have been now, the state had actually announced a partnership with about 200 local community banks and credit unions, in addition to some of our largest lenders. And those entities have agreed to allow for sort of a deferral of mortgages, but those are only for federally backed mortgages, correct? And so, again, as you mentioned, it doesn't mean that they are canceling the fact that you owe it. Essentially, they're basically doing it and waiving certain penalties and fees associated with that, correct?
Right, exactly. And also, go ahead. Also, in terms of student loans, as part of the stimulus legislation we had a couple of weeks ago, the $2.2 trillion of relief, federally backed student loans are now at 0% interest rate until September 30th. So for the next 6 months, the interest rate is 0. If you have an auto debit on those loan payments, they will be canceled for now.
Is there anything that students need to do in order to, or people who are paying student loans have to do in order to get that benefit?
It depends on the loan that they have. If it's a federally backed loan, then those are all automatic. Now, but they can still voluntarily continue to make payments. And what that means is every payment they make will go directly to principal. There's no interest on that. However, if you have a private loan, they don't fall under those terms.
Got it. So the advice there is that if you have any loans, student loans, you want to check to make sure whether it's a federally backed loan or if it's a private loan. If it's a federally backed loan, it sounds like there's nothing people need to do. It will automatically kick in. People can still pay, but there's nothing they need to do. But if it is a private loan, they may want to check with their lenders, correct?
That's right.
And then going back to, for just a moment on the mortgage item for just a little bit, we talked about the federally backed loan and the forbearance. There's also some programs I've heard that banks are offering to potentially renegotiate or restructure loans. Is that right?
Right. And that's true even outside of this coronavirus crisis. You can contact your bank because rates have come down. Rates have come down significantly, and sometimes the bank might want to keep you as a customer. So you can call them and say, can you just lower my rate? In some cases, the bank will do that. Or if the bank will say, well, we can't do that, you can ask them for what's called a quick refinance, which means you stay with the same lender. They already know who you are, so there'll be less paperwork.
And that's a great point. I know that as interest rate environments have gone down and people are able to save by refinancings, typically in order to do that, banks will also need to be recording documents with my office in order to really verify what the new conditions are. I also just want to take this opportunity at this moment to let people know that our office, while we're not publicly open, we are still available in terms of accepting electronic recordings from banks and institutions. So there shouldn't be an issue there. But of course, if people are running into any of those kinds of problems, they can feel free to reach out to us.
Exactly.
And then Larry, just going to switching gears a little bit, we spoke a little bit about both mortgage avenues to try to reduce expenses. You talked a little bit about the student loans component. Can you talk more about the income side? And so there are a number of programs that also have been enacted relatively quickly to help people on the income side. Can you speak to some of that?
Yeah, so the most high profile item is the stimulus checks. And I'm going to do a screen share of a chart of what to expect. So let me give this a try here and let me know if it's showing up correctly. There we go. All right. Does this show up relatively
Yeah.
clear on your screen
Yes.
there? Can everybody see this? Okay, good. So the question is, what is my stimulus check going to be? And I've heard people have already gotten their checks already. It started yesterday. And so they've been showing up in your bank account if the IRS already has your direct deposit information. So it's up to $1,200 per person as long as your adjusted gross income is less than $75,000. So a couple can get $2,400 plus $500 for each child who's 17 and under. And then depending what your income is, there's a phase out and you end up with nothing if your income's above $99,000. Let me show another screen share here. This is a calculator. Let's see. Just bear with me here. Here we go. So Kiplinger magazine, and I think you'll show one of the links on how to get there. Kiplinger magazine has a very handy stimulus check calculator, and you can go to this website and just input what your filing status is, how many children you have in your household under 17, and what's your income. And in this example here, your stimulus check is $4,400. So this is a handy dandy website to figure out what your stimulus check is going to be. Now, questions are, how can I quickly get my payment? The IRS is, oh, go
Before you
ahead.
go into that, can we go back to that chart just ahead of time that you had shown earlier?
Okay, let me click on this. Let me click on this. You're talking about the chart here. There we go.
So let's see, there we go. So I do want to give the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce credit because they did share this chart with us, which we thought was incredibly helpful. But one question I wanted to ask Larry, because I think there are a lot of questions that came from this. People are either eligible for it or they're not. And then depending on their income, it kind of phases and gets the amount that you might get gets smaller and smaller the higher the income is that you make. And then eventually it phases out. If I am a family or a couple or an individual or a head of a household and I am phased out of receiving any check myself, would I expect to get anything for my children, for example?
It depends if your child would be eligible on their own or not. So if they are eligible to be claims dependent, then the answer is no, they will not get it. However, if they're over age 17 and they're working, they will get their own $1,200.
Yeah.
Now, here's the tricky thing. It's based upon your 2019 tax return. Now, if you did not file a tax return in 2019 or you haven't filed yet because the deadline is now July 15th, the IRS will look at your 2018 tax return. And so there's a question is, what if my 18 income is lower than my 19 income? So under my 19 income, I don't qualify. My income's too high. And we just got an email about that for someone who got laid off and got a severance check. So they have a very large income for 2019. So my advice for that person is hold off sending in your 2019 tax return. Get the stimulus check based on your 2018. So if your income in 18 is lower than 19, you might want to hold off on filing your 19 tax return And I told her, let me know when you get your stimulus check, then we'll send in your 19 tax return.
Larry, can you talk a little bit about how people are receiving their checks? And the reason why I ask this is because so many people are immediately out of income and they need that income pretty immediately. How is it, or what is your advice for people to be able to more quickly receive that stimulus check? And what do people need to do?
Right, right. So the fastest way to get your check is to go to the IRS website, irs.gov, and they've updated their homepage here. On the homepage, you click on Get My Payment, and on that Get Your Payment on this portal here, you click on this button that says Get Your Payment. That's when you enter your identifying information, and you'll also enter your bank information, your bank deposit information.
Mhm.
So that's the
So
quickest way in getting your refund for your stimulus check. Otherwise, it's going to be a paper check, and that can take weeks or months.
it sounds to me like if you have filed your 2018 or 2019 taxes and you provided an electronic transfer information for a direct deposit into your bank account, you will be the first groups to receive the check because it's easy for the government to kind of do a wire transfer directly to your accounts. For folks who might have filed, and so for those individuals, you don't need to do anything more. That will directly come to you, is what I hear. Is that right?
If they already have your direct deposit information, there's nothing you need to do. Also, if you're a Social Security recipient and you don't file tax returns, the IRS is working with the Social Security Administration to get the data because your Social Security checks are direct deposited anyway.
Yeah. And then the other thing that you mentioned, which was important, is that if you did file your 2018 or 2019 taxes, but you did not provide an electronic bank transfer information, the alternative the IRS would have is to send you a physical check. But everything that we're hearing is that it's going to take a very long time for those physical checks to actually be processed and sent to you. And so for that reason, Larry has put this IRS website up here for you so that you know that if you've already filed and you haven't provided that electronic information before, you can do that now so that you can get on the queue to receive an electronic transfer more quickly than a check would come to you, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Great. Is there anything else that, in terms of programs or incomes that you can think of that are helpful for people to know about at this point?
Okay, let me stop the share here. Okay. Well, first of all, let me just finish the bit about the stimulus checks. So let's say your income's high in 2019, so you don't qualify for the stimulus check. What if you got laid off in 2020 because of the coronavirus and all that, and your income's going to drop below the level? You will get a credit on your 2020 tax return because these payments are actually what's called rebates. They're actually credits on your 2020 tax return, and they're not taxable income. So some people can get up to $4,000, and that's tax free. So that's completely tax free. Now, in terms of other sources of income, it depends on the individual situation. But as part of the CARES Act that recently passed, you have easier access to your retirement accounts. For a lot of people, their retirement accounts are their biggest source of money. So if you're affected by this coronavirus, uh, if you're a victim of this coronavirus situation, you can take up to $100,000 penalty free out of your retirement accounts.
Mm.
And if you pay them back within 3 years, it's tax free.
Yeah.
So you have 3 years to pay it back. So that's a source of money you can consider.
Mm. Great. Thank you. Is there anything that you think people should know about unemployment insurance or anything else that is available out there?
Right. The EDD is incredibly overwhelmed right now. So the first word about that is we want everybody pretty patient. And as you know, the EDD offices are closed. So normally we would go in there, stand in line, and talk to someone. So we realize we have to ask for some patience. Let me do another screen share here. We have a link to the EDD has put up some information on their website. And right here, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, PUA. Again, that is part of the CARES Act that just recently passed. And that provides an extra $600 from the federal government per week on top of what your state unemployment benefits are. So that's new. And what is brand new that we've never seen in history is that people who are are not employees, who are independent contractors, who are gig workers,
Yeah,
can apply for unemployment now. Or if you're self-employed, you can apply for unemployment
right.
because your business is you can't work because you're not allowed to. So
Wonderful.
definitely take a look at the EDD.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, Larry, with everything that comes with a rollout of financial resources,
Hmm.
inevitably you're going to find people who are going to try to take advantage of the situation and
Right.
create fraud or to try to get to take away the money that you are due, right? And so, can you tell us about kind of what you might be hearing about, or quick tips for people to prevent falling victim to fraud?
Right. So sadly, we already heard news reports of scams that are happening. So just to remind you, the IRS will not call you. The IRS will not come knocking on your door, and and there is no fee to your stimulus payment.
Great.
So, um, so, and unfortunately, the biggest victims of these tend to be our seniors.
Yeah.
So, and we just got to be diligent and the phishing schemes. If you get a strange email, again, the IRS will not send you an email. And so when you see email says click here to get your stimulus check, don't do that. So go directly to the IRS website to register your information. So a lot of scammers are out there trying to collect your bank information and
Yeah.
try to get your check.
Yeah. So I think this is just an extra word of caution. I think many of the people who are trying to create these frauds are very sophisticated. They might even send you an email that has the IRS logo stuck on there because they're able to do some fancy work with graphics and everything else to make it look like it's a very official. So instead of clicking on links that are provided in those emails, for example, don't go do that because you don't know what the source might be or if it is really a fraudulent link. Better to go directly on your own to those independent websites to make sure to the IRS's direct website to provide the information as Larry mentioned. And again, time, especially because so many people are so in such a tough situation and you're desperately trying to get through to banks and you're trying to get through to even San Francisco's Office of Small Business to help and all of these different entities. If you see an email that comes and it says Office of Small Business, you immediately are hopeful that is the right source and that someone's reaching back out to you. Just be aware that you always want to call back either someone you have directly talked to in those offices, right? Or go directly to their own websites, the official websites, because a lot of people are taking advantage of that to try to get information from you. Actually, I just received an email yesterday that said, click here to confirm your attendance. And it was from the San Francisco Office of Small Business, except it was not our email address and it was not technically the San Francisco Office of Small Business. So just be aware that these things are happening. People are trying to fish for information, trying to get to to access your account. So be very, very careful, be very, very suspect when anyone is asking you to confirm with information and all of that. I do have a few questions and I think we're almost running out of time already, so I want to get to it. There was a question that Michelle had asked from the community, and she had said, I have heard on the news that the federal government is providing relief on student loans. If I want to take advantage of this, is there any fine print that I should know about that might change the terms of my loan?
Okay, so she should definitely go to her specific lender's website to read what the details are, and all of them have it on their front page right now. All the different student loan servicers have this information on their website. It's kind of hard to call people right now since most of the people are working from their homes. But the thing is, if she qualifies for the forbearance or the 0% interest rate, certainly she can take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
But she
Wonderful.
still owes the money though. But let me point out something that Michelle should take a look at too. As part of this CARES Act legislation, employers can pay off up to $5,250 of your student loan tax-free.
Mm,
So that's a new employee benefit. So a lot of employers are doing, so the employer gets a tax deduction for doing that, but the employee does not have to pay tax on that. And you can bring your balance down by $5,250.
got it. I've got another question here that said, I may be eligible for the CARES Act check, the stimulus check. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I have not lost my job and I may not need it as much as somebody else needs it.
Mhm.
Is there something you would suggest I do with it?
Ah, Well, it all depends on your financial situation. I mean, first of all, we want you to take care of yourself, so you might want to use that to build up your savings, or maybe you can use it to pay off some debt you might have, or if you're fortunate enough, give it to a worthy charity. A lot of people need help from us.
Thank
So
you.
those are some considerations.
Thank you so much for your time, Larry. And I know that I learned a lot from you, and I hope that other people really benefit from this and are able to also share it with their friends and family. So with that, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you also, Larry. Please make sure you share these resources widely with your friends, your families, and other people that you know who might need that help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carmen.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.